Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about is how often women will lose their grounding. Um, Actually, when I really started thinking about it, obviously men can lose their grounding as well. But if we think about the nature of females, we are designed to be adaptable. Our physiology is designed to be adaptable, to change and morph from stage to stage through our bodies.
Sacred trust, holistic perspectives, and dynamic growth. Join us on a journey to cultivate the inner peace you need to maximize your business success and humanistic excellence.
This week, we are going to explore the gift of grounded confidence through the Enneagram with my very special guest, friend, and colleague, Sandra Orndorff. Sandra works with women to see clear vision of their future by helping them root into their passion while staying grounded in the present. Many women lose their sense of self and confidence as they hold their own pain as well as the pain of a loved one. And many feel as if pieces of themselves need reclaiming to feel secure and whole. Sandra helps women find the balance of a strong back and a soft heart to find their authentic voice, their authentic purpose, and their embodied confidence. Sandra, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here and honored that you took the time to be with us today. Maybe you could tell our viewers a little bit more about you and how you came to the Enneagram.
Absolutely. So I was a corporate management consultant and a systems project manager who has recently stepped in to my passion and my purpose as an energy healer. For those that struggle really being on a hamster wheel of repeating unconscious patterns in their life. These patterns not only affect their relationship to their self, but it also affects the relationship to others and to their own health and their livelihood. So as a seeker by nature, I was always searching, just came upon the Enneagram by happenstance. Somebody, said the word, didn't even know, it's one of those when people don't know what it is, they're like, Ennea what? Somebody had to spell it for me. I went like most of us do, we'll Google. I took a test, took the test, found out what my type is. I'm a type 7, the enthusiast. Read the description and was pretty much like, yep, that's me. Put it on a shelf. Really didn't think too much about it until I was in a time of desperation in my life. Sort of an event happened in my family that threw all of us for a loop, but especially me. And I had an overwhelming desire to leave, to flee, to just eject out of my family. And now that I do sacred contracts, I realize what it was like. When you have a piano and you have all the strings, it was like somebody was taking their hand on all the strings of my life and slamming down at the same time, because my mother archetype and my natural Enneagram type of 7 of not wanting to be trapped in pain were literally colliding against each other. It was, really an unraveling to a certain extent. So I realized that while I couldn't necessarily help my loved one, I knew that I had to step into my own work or my whole family. Like I was going to impact my whole family. And I remember the Enneagram. So that's when I really stepped into using the Enneagram as a tool for self-awareness, for spiritual awakening. And so that's not everybody's story of how they come to the Enneagram. But I think it's one of those tools that it's one of curiosity until you really need it. And then it's a major tool for development if you want to use it for something much deeper.
I love that, because I mean, for so many of us on that path of self-discovery and self-mastery, we all find different tools that resonate. And as a mom, like, I could really feel you and relate to you. I mean, I know you outside of here as well, but that pain of wanting to flee your family and flee what was going on, but know that you are the glue that kind of holds them together. So for you to find a tool for yourself, that's really great. And I know you've helped me figure out some of my own Enneagram number or typing, if you will. And I wanted to ask you, for those people who are not familiar with the Enneagram, like, could you tell us a little bit more about it and like why it's gained popularity and what it means to be typed?
Sure. So really the Enneagram is a tool really to get back to your true essence. So you'll hear that word a lot in spirituality talk, true essence, and then the egoic nature. So in a nutshell, that's really what it's about. It's sort of showing two sides of the coin. It's showing this, egoic constriction in personality behavior, but there's also an aspect of spiritual development. And that's why it's so different than any other personality tool, which is pretty static. The nature of the Enneagram by its definition is not static. It's actually showing you why one personality type doesn't explain us. We aren't a type. We are a type because of the motivation, but we have lots of different behaviors, which is part of why it gets confusing to people, because they feel like there's more than one type. The symbology, and I'll just show you in case if you've never seen it. It is a symbol. It's based very rich in symbolism, and the symbology actually goes back to antiquity. We look back through all the major religions, and there's aspects of the religion inside of the Enneagram. So while it's really this composite of a lot of different spiritual tools through over 2,000 plus years, it's really only been in the last 60 to 100 years where actually it was a group of people went up, Gurdjieff went up into the mountains of Chile, and they went up for spiritual awakening. And what they realized is when they had this freedom of spiritual awakening, when they came down off the mountain, there was constriction. And they noticed the constriction in thinking was different for different people. And somehow, powers that be, as it translated orally from person to person, which until about 15, 20 years ago, this was an oral tradition. It was almost unheard of that we would be talking of a type. You would never tell someone your type, because thinking that the ego would lock down on the type, on the behavior. It would be almost like counterintuitive. So psychology is actually modern day psychology. Dr. David Daniels out at Stanford was one of the really big leaders of this, is bringing it back into the States and into the psychological development. They mapped psychological behavior on top of that spiritual structure. There's a book called The Road Back to You that's very easy to read by Ian Cron and Susan Stabile. They are both in the Christian faith, but that book, because of its ease of reading something so complex, actually took it off in the Christian non-denominational Christian world. It took off, but also young adults found it. So young adults below the age of 30 have really gravitated to it, because if you have children that age, this age, this generation, they're natural seekers. So they're looking for things. They're finding things. So they totally get it.
Yeah, when I first heard about it, and I appreciate you explaining it, it was back in like 2013. And I'd had it done, but I didn't really get it then. Like working with you on it and hearing you speak about it in some clubhouse rooms that we do together, I'm starting to get it more and more. And, how it can help you really be grounded and feel more confident in that is kind of neat. How do people Wanted to ask you about when they're grounded. We talked about the other day, you and I talked about this, of being adaptable, as a strength. How can we use that to be grounded and adaptable at the same time as a strength for ourselves?
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about is how often women will lose their grounding. Actually, when I really started thinking about it, obviously men can lose their grounding as well. But if we think about the nature of females, we are designed to be adaptable. Our physiology is designed to be adaptable, to change and morph from stage to stage through our bodies. And I'm curious that if that our biological adaptability also impacts our natural ability to lose our own grounding. And what I mean by that is, and part of the gift of the Enneagram is you learn not only your true essence. And so each of the numbers represents the symbology of the circle is the symbology of completeness and unity. And each one of the numbers, this is the spiritual part of it, represents an aspect of the divine. So all together, we represent an aspect of the divine. That's what we call in the Enneagram the holy ideas. At the top is holy love. I won't go through them all, but at the top is holy love. And so if you're familiar with the if you're familiar with the Christian verse, this is, and the greatest is he that is loved, well, that's why the 9 sits on top. So if we lose our sense of our purpose, why we're here on earth, very similar actually to in astrology, when you look at life path, like soul journey, like what if you were born during that time, that's what you're about. That's very similar to this. But as we become adaptable and we start taking in the opinions of others, the reflection of others, we sort of lose that sense. And so I was thinking about how, a mirror, right? So if I'm always looking, if I'm always looking at you to find my reflection of me, while that is true, we all in relationship, that's what it's about. We don't get to stay in isolation and figure out who we are. We're always having to be in relationship with, getting reflected back. But if we don't have that sense of grounding on what are our gifts, what is our purpose, then we start morphing into all these different versions, and then we lose a sense of who am I really? And the essence of the Enneagram is all these crisscross patterns has built-in adaptability. We don't stay static in a number. We go to growth, we go to stress, we have relationship to the 2 beside. That's also the baked-in empathy, because when we start having empathy for ourselves as we change and morph, we actually grow empathy for the other because we've actually stepped into their shoe. When me as a 7 goes to stress to the 1, then I have naturally stepped into the world of a 1. When I go to growth and I go to 5, I literally step into so I am baked into empathy when I realize where I'm not just doing it for just to confuse everybody around me. Like, why is she acting that way now? Which sometimes you do that yourself. Like, why am I acting that way now? That may not be because you're being reflected. That may be because it's you. So then you start discerning that unconscious behavior is you, not just I'm behaving because someone else. There's a difference. That starts being grounded. That starts letting you know what? This is purposeful that I go this way. When I retreat, that's not bad for me as a 7. I'm a butterfly. I'm flitting out here, like reflecting a lot of things. I have to come back into self to find that grounding.
That is so important, that going back into self to find that grounding, because I love what you shared. And, you know, as women, many of us are so adaptable. And I know for myself for too long, a little too adaptable, like I wasn't grounded in me. And what you shared about the Enneagram being, you know, we kind of, my interpretation is that we move through some of the numbers, or we have one more predominant number, but we're not fixed in that, you know, and that part about stepping into someone else's shoes, I mean, that's powerful, like, because when we can step into their shoes and see them for who they really are from that vantage point, instead of our own judgments, I mean, that's where a lot of internal and shifts in relationships, I feel like, can happen. I wanted to ask you then, if someone really wants to know which number is their number or their predominant number in relation to, I know we've talked before, like a triad, how can they find out? Like what do they do to find out their number? Because it is, you said it was oral, but now it's written. So where can they go?
Yeah. So, you know, there are many online tests. One of the best is the RETI test, RHETI, because it's Russ Hudson. It's the Enneagram Institute, which has the most empirical data out there as a typing tool. Not to say that other tools are bad. It's just that they have the most longevity scientifically for their test. It can be a little bit confusing because it's not one that's going to spit out a number. What it's going to do is it's going to tell you your top 4. And what that's really pointing to is that the Enneagram is a journey. It's not a destination. So it is through the discovery of what your number is part of the journey of the Enneagram. So that can be sometimes confusing. And underneath all, it is your motivation. And that's another part that is confusing to people, because they're like, well, I like to get things done. I'm goal oriented. I must be a performer. Yeah. Well, I'm also goal oriented and I like to get things done. And I don't resonate with shame, which the 3 is in the performers in the shame triad. I also don't resonate with image oriented. That's not I'm in the fear triad. So when someone said shame or fear, hands down, I knew which one it was. Also, though, when you look at the motivation, I think we talked about this the other day, is how do you really know if you're like struggling with what your number is? There is an underlying motivation that each one of them are motivated. And I'll just walk you through that real fast.
That would be great.
Just so, you know, at least we're not in the theoretical, there's something tangible. So the perfectionist, is motivated to be good or right. So their lens, so imagine that all of us come in and we're all seeing the same thing. And if I could change the color of these glasses, like maybe the one has yellow. Okay, so they're seeing the world through these yellow perfectionist lenses. The 2 has a need to be needed. So maybe theirs is pink. So they're looking through, I need to be needed. So where can I help? So they're looking for where they can help, right? The 1 is going, I can help, but I'm looking at how can I be good? The 3 is, you know, maybe it's blue, like they're saying they have a motivation to perform or succeed. So they're into that. In material world, that may not be. Maybe they want to be the crunchiest of their crunchy friends. What is success? It's in the I. So they're shapeshifters, because this group says this is important. This group says this is important. The 4 wants to be unique. They want to be an individual, different color lens, looking for what does it mean to be unique? What does it mean to be individual? The 5 is motivated with the need to know. So the 5 starts the fear triad. The 2, 3, and the 4, they're in the image triad. The 6 has a need to be secure. So they're looking for their lens, their gray lens might be looking for what's going to go wrong. What can go wrong? And it's really motivated by, I got to keep all my people secure, because if they're not secure, I'm not secure. The 7 talked a little bit about this, has a need not to be trapped, especially in pain. Need not to feel pain. The 8, starting here, the anger triad, the 8 has a need to control, to not be vulnerable. And the 9, last of all, has a need to not lose contact. So the 9 sits on top, has a little bit of an aspect, sees into all, and they have a need not to lose connection. So each one of these has a unique gift. Those are, I sort of said that in sort of a weakness perspective, but on the other hand, what they bring to the world is, what does it mean to be right? What is perfection? What is goodness? They not only see when it's not, they're also motivated by what is. So, the 2, the helper, is they see who needs help. They're feeling into, God bless, I'm heart repressed. The heart repressed are not, they're pretty centered in their self. Thank God we have people that are feeling into other people's hearts. So you see what I mean, is by us all coming together, do we create this beautiful unity. And we literally, in our breath, in our placement on this earth, are playing our part. So even your weakness is part of your strength. And finding that grounded confidence of, instead of seeing that that's a weakness, it's a different perspective to turn it around and say, when it comes from not the intention of keeping yourself safe,
Right.
and the heart being open, that's a beautiful gift to give to the world. Now, you asked, can others be type? Can you have them more than one? I get that question all the time. And it was in a Clubhouse room that I got downloaded the answer, because I
love that.
I was downloaded that no, because you were given a purpose, and you come into this world as an expression of the divine. You can only be one type. So you're one type by nature of your aspect of the divine here on earth. You have behavior that represents all, because what's one is in the whole. What's in the whole is in us. So by definition, we do have all of the behavior.
I love that you shared that, because I've been trying to figure out which number is mine. Like, we did the test, but working with you really kind of helps solidifying it. And I appreciate that you talk about that it is a journey. It's part of this self-mastery journey to really delve into it and learn more about yourself. And I love how you shared about the different numbers, and that the weaknesses can also be our strength. We only have a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to ask you quickly, do you feel like it's important for someone to have a coach to help them be guided through the Enneagram?
I do, because I think, if you, I guess, let's go back, let's talk intention. If it's a fun thing and it's just like looking up your horoscope and you just want a little tidbit.
Yeah.
Do you need a coach? Maybe not. Maybe you need a coach because, you're like, oh, it could be this, it could be this. I don't really know. You're kind of curious. You get a coach to help, tease out, because there's a lot of numbers that look like each other. And oftentimes we have to tease out what's the motivating thing. And that's usually a series of questions. And that's sort of deep listening from within. There, you're going to need a coach. Now, again, maybe they're just going to take it and sit it on the shelf. Again, taking the next step is, I'm curious. This is sort of opening up a window for me. And now, oh, okay, I can see these repeating patterns. I want to change an aspect. And so through that kind of coaching is really honing into, all right, here's your Enneagram number. Now let's bring your life. And oftentimes in my coaching, I can say, here's where your Enneagram type is rearing its head. And by being able to put it in a neutral term, there's something about neutrality with the Enneagram. You're not the only one that has that number. Now, the 4s, the individualists, they do not want to hear that. Also, an 8, the challenger, doesn't want to be pegged either with control. But most of us think that their whole psyche can relax when it's like, oh, I'm not the only one that's dealing with this. I'm not the only one. It's not just me. It's not this like failure on my part. There's something about the unity in that. There's some level of empathy that will come into the heart when you know it's not just your own personal experience.
I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, that empathy and that connection, that knowing that we're not the only one or not alone or other people are wired this way, I think that really helps on our journey and really speaks to why it is, sometimes helpful to have a coach. Sandra, I so appreciate all the information. I had more questions for you, but I don't think we're going to get to them. And we covered a lot of ground today, and we talked about, that grounded confidence, adaptability, self-mastery, really knowing ourselves and our own motivation, which is so poignant. And one of our listeners had a question about the book you mentioned in the beginning. Could you repeat the title of that, Sandra?
Yeah, it's called The Road Back to You.
Ooh, I'm going to check that book.
Ian Cron, C-R-O-N, and Susan Stabile, S-T-A-B-I-L-E.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And if our viewers want to know more about you and how they can reach you directly, what's the best way for them to find you?
They can find me at Envision, like Enneagram, E-N-N, and Vision, VISION.net. Yeah, and I am running a special for a quick, 25-minute if you've taken a test for $39, and then $135 to take the test and get typed. So if they're interested in being typed, that's an opportunity.
And do you also have a free gift for the viewers? Is that something?
I do. So one of the areas of awareness is knowing our communication style, right? So communication is both listening and hearing, and so our speaking and listening. And so often we get relationship issues just by our default communication style. So by each type, I give the communication style and the motivations that I talked to you very briefly about. And so that might be helpful if you just, my husband and I'm the storyteller and he's the barker. Those are examples too. And actually, it was very enlightening for me because that's been a bone of contention for our whole marriage. Like, why are you yelling at me? And then I realized, wow, his default way of talking as an 8 is to bark.
I love that you shared that, so we can learn about our relationships with our very close loved ones as well. Sandra, thank you so much. And thank you for your vulnerability and your wisdom and your presence today. I'm so honored that you took some time to speak with us.